What is going on, YouTube? So coming back today with my next NBA Power Rankings video. Haven't done one of these in a little while, and it's about that time where, free agency drawing to a close. I said I would do this eventually, and I felt like now was a good time to do it. Really not that many more like really big signings, I think, that are gonna really take hold in the rest of the offseason. There might be some big trades and whatnot, but that can really happen at any time. So let's go ahead and start at, well, I'm going to put this list in the description below, so I'm just going to start with my three outside. So start with the first one. These are in no particular order, and I'm going to start with the Atlanta Hawks. So the Atlanta Hawks, I feel like, are a little underrated heading into the year. Yeah, they lost some of their better pieces, but they picked up some good ones in the process. Sorry about this. Chair's starting to break on me. Anyway, I kind of like what they got in place for this year. They picked up Taurean Prince in the draft. I don't think he was the best pick at 12 overall, but he's a serviceable player for sure that's, in my mind, pretty NBA ready. You get Dwight Howard, who will still, again, be a force to be reckoned with in the paint, and you got a really good front court now between Dwight Howard and Paul Millsap. Dennis Schroeder, who's been ready to take over as starting point guard for a while. You lose Teague, but it's better that they're not splitting minutes there anyway. I think this is still a good playoff team in the East. Number 2, I got the Utah Jazz. So the Jazz are an interesting situation. I don't know how good of offseason they had. They still have one of the better front courts in the NBA between Gobert and Derek Favors. Let me pull up the starting five. They did get rid of Trey Burke for almost nothing. That might be a good move. They pretty much just needed to shed roster space. I think it's time for Dante Exum to finally take that next step. He's a guy that really just hasn't lived up to the billing yet. Showed big progress last year. They picked up George Hill to add a little bit of backcourt depth. I don't know if he's going to start right out of the gate. They didn't really do much in the draft as far as I'm concerned. So they traded away the first round pick. Front three look good between Gordon Hayward, Derek Favors, and Rudy Gobert. They got a lot of depth. Trey Lyles, Boris Diaw also in the front court. And then George Hill, Dante Exum at point guard. And then they got Rodney Hood and Alec Burks at the shooting guard spot for depth. And I believe they picked up Joe Johnson, so that just adds more depth at the 3 spot. All right. First on the 3 outside, and some people might say they're a little bit overrated, but I'm going to say the Minnesota Timberwolves. To me, the T-Wolves are, ready to make that jump. Everyone talks about them as kind of the sleeping giant, the potential team. And, again, I like where they're headed. Andrew Wiggins, we'll see if he pans out. But I truly believe that, man, Karl Anthony Towns, he's the future. He's gotten a lot of hype this year, but I don't even know if it's all the hype that he deserves. Again, let's take a look at the starting 5. This starting 5 might not be as impressive to some people top to bottom, but, there's one thing that I really think is just going to put him over the top this year, and that was drafting Chris Dunn. Chris Dunn looks like the real deal. Now, you got the backcourt that I was saying they needed. They got someone to back up Ricky Rubio and Zach LaVine. I don't even know if he might back him up the first year, but he shouldn't be backing up anyone. He should be starting. Front court, Gorgie Jang, I think, is one of the more underrated big men in the league. Definitely a serviceable player. They pick up Brandon Rush to add extra depth at the small forward spot. And you still got Kevin Garnett to mentor whoever you need in the front court. And then Nikola Pekovic. Who knows what's going to happen with him. Hasn't really panned out so far. And then Adrian Payne, who I still think is a name to watch out for. All right. Moving to the top 10. In number 10, I got the Detroit Pistons. With that new hack-a-Shaq rule, I was talking about it earlier today in my last NBA video. Andre Drummond's going to benefit greatly from that. He's one of the players that is going to benefit most from that rule. And, Andre Drummond was already one of the most, unstoppable players in the paint. One of the most unstoppable big men, one of the best big men, one of the best rebounders, back to the basket scorers, all that sort of stuff. you add that rule and you put that with it on a team that was already good and already competitive. And again, I think this team's ready to take it to the next level this year. Number 9, I got a team that made it to the second round last year and looks like they have a lot of potential again this year. That's the Portland Trail Blazers. I like what this team was able to do this offseason. They were able to keep Allen Crabbe, who I think is a very serviceable piece to their lineup. Damian Lillard, TJ McCollum, obviously in the backcourt. McCollum stepping up huge this past year. Mason Plumlee, they picked up Festus Ezeli for the front court, which is a good move. They pick up Evan Turner, who I'm not the biggest fan of, but he adds scoring depth either way. Again, I like where this team's headed. Number 8, I got the Boston Celtics. Again, one of the teams that made some big moves this offseason. They add in Al Horford, who really should put that lineup over the top. The backcourt's still pretty stacked, and the addition of Jaylen Brown's going to help. Outside shooting's going to need some work. That has been a theme this entire offseason. They do lose Evan Turner, but I don't think that's going to hurt them too much. Anyway, number 7, I got the Indiana Pacers, and they made some big moves this offseason that, again, as a Pacers fan, I'm very happy about. The starting 5 now looks very impressive. You got Jeff Teague at the 1, you got most likely Monte Ellis at the 2, who I think people don't really give him the credit he deserves as much. Yeah, he's not the player he was on Dallas, but he's still a good player with the Pacers. Obviously, you got Paul George at the 3, and then you probably got Thaddeus Young at the 4, Miles Turner at the 5, or Miles Turner at the 4 now, Jefferson at the 5 with Thaddeus Young on the bench as a 6th man. Either way, this team's got a decent amount of depth. I like their second round pick with George Niang. He was a very, very good player in college. Like, he was one of the few guys that could score from almost anywhere on the court. But anyway, at number 6, I got the Toronto Raptors. Again, a team that I really like what they were able to do this offseason. There's a theme with pretty much every team on this list. They had a good offseason. Maybe outside of the... you know what? I don't know if any of these teams on this list had a bad one besides the Clippers. Anyway, the Raptors. Kyle Lowry I think gonna have another great year. DeMar DeRozan, able to keep him for a long time, which surprised me. I thought they were actually gonna lose him to LA. I keep bringing up this name, Norman Powell, because I really think he's ready to take that, next leap forward. I believe they added in Jakob Poeltl, add a little bit of front court depth there. I think he is a little bit of an upgrade from Bismack Biyombo, which is tough to say because Biyombo did have a good playoff run. But overall, he's a little bit more limited than Jakob Poeltl, even though Jakob Poeltl's skill set is somewhat limited. But he was still a good lottery pick. Then obviously you still got Jonas Valanciunas, who in my mind is getting better by the year, slowly but surely. And number 5, got the Memphis Grizzlies. Now long term, their signings might not help them too much, but I talked about Memphis last year as that might be their last year that they'll be able to compete. It might be time to shuffle everything out and move forward. Instead, they hung on to pretty much everything. They had one of the best drafts of any team in the NBA, and they re-signed their biggest piece, maybe, arguably, which is Mike Conley. Wade Baldwin's looked great in Summer League so far. Deontay Davis was an absolute steal in the second round. You signed Chandler Parsons, granted to a little bit too much, but he's still a good piece to add in if he stays healthy. And you still got a good front court between Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph. Again, Memphis looking very solid heading into this year's probably a projected 3 to 5 seed in the West. All right, number 4, I got the LA Clippers. Now, Clips have been a team that people have been expecting to contend for a few years now. And I mean, they are a contender every year, but they pretty much choke every year. This is still one of the most talented teams in the NBA, no doubt about that. Again, DeAndre Jordan, another person that's going to be helped by this hack-a-Shaq rule. He was one of the biggest victims of it last year. And, this team's already super talented around him. Blake Griffin had a little bit of issues with the team last year, some health issues. He might get traded before the offseason's over. If he does, then I'll adjust that accordingly. But as of right now, they got Paul Pierce coming back for another year. You got Chris Paul, who, again, might not be around next year, but he'll still be around this year. We'll see what happens. At number 3, San Antonio Spurs. Again, another team that I really like what they were able to do this offseason, considering how much it looked like they were going to lose. Another team that I want to pull up their starting 5. Let's see here. And, you know, it's impressive. Like, they retained Manu Ginobili, who was on the brink of retirement. And then you still got Kawhi Leonard. You still got, like I said, Tony Parker, Patty Mills, Danny Green. And then some combination of Pau Gasol and LaMarcus Aldridge at the 4 and the 5. You know, I think they still need to add a little bit to their front court. There's no doubt about that. But you still also picked up DeJounte Murray in the draft, which was a very, very good pick, adding even more backcourt depth. All right. So at number 2, I got the Cleveland Cavaliers. Again, still the best team in the East. Rather quiet offseason. Nothing, nothing's really going to change them contending. They made some pretty good low-key moves, though. Like, again, looking at their roster, they were able to add more depth than they lost, in my opinion. Losing Matthew Dellavedova is going to hurt. Granted, I think the Bucks got a steal for him, but they pick up Mo Williams, the journeyman, who can have good seasons. You're going to get J.R. Smith back eventually. You're not going to have to start Dante Jones. And then, pretty much still got the same core together. Then you pick up Mike Dunleavy, which was a very, very, very easy but good move. So, there's still Kevin Love trade rumors like surfacing, but I don't think that's going to take part really in anything. And then, you add a little bit more depth at the point guard spot by drafting Kay Felder, who I think he's a really good point guard, pretty much like a Tyler Ulis clone, just really short. Anyway, number 1, obviously, I got the Golden State Warriors. I actually did a complete video about them. Depth might be a little bit of a problem, but that's literally the only thing that's going to be a problem this year. If they're able to stay healthy, then this is going to be a dominant team. Everyone knows that. Probably an overwhelming favorite for the finals. They already are. We'll see if they pick up anyone else. Ray Allen's talked about coming out of retirement to join them or the Cavs. Really haven't heard any news about that in the last couple of days, but keep an eye on that. See if they, make any more low-key signings. Like I said, they did lose a lot of their depth. Between guys like Festus Ezeli, Leandro Barbosa, Brandon Rush. Oh, I had a few names earlier, but they're escaping me right now. Andrew Bogut, Harrison Barnes. There's a few other ones too. Anyway, they are backed up by a lot of young talent. So, see what happens there. But anyway, that pretty much does it. Like I said, just wanted to do a little top 10 video for my power rankings. Not go through an entire set of power rankings. I might do that at the overall end of the offseason or preseason. I don't do that much, though, because those are really long videos. Because I like to go pretty in-depth. Anyway, that'll pretty much do it. Like I said, I will have the entire list in the description below if you want to go back through it or if you skipped ahead or anything like that, like I always do. So that's pretty much it. So, yeah.